Hey, kia ora koutou whānau. Welcome back to another summer holiday week of shows here on BHN, Big Hairy News. We're back live again Monday the 22nd. Good to be with you. Thank you for being a part of what we've been doing during the summer period. I'm glad people have been enjoying the shows and the clips. I've been watching the numbers and seeing that people are around still, which has been most gratifying. Really excited to get back with you next week. Kind of have thought maybe we should have been back this week with all the news that's going on, but we got to have a break. We got to make some space, and we've got to get the engines ready to go when we come back full on and hardcore. Coming up tonight, Lord Sumtion, Lord Sumptuous came to New Zealand to spread a whole bunch of disinformation around COVID in 2023. All the facts were wrong. We'll be having a look at a conversation he had about that. Also, you'll appreciate that we're now in 2024, but a bunch of our best ofs were prior to the election. So this clip, along with I guess other clips we're playing through the week, is one of those examples. National's disinformation about inflation and the good news story about the drop in inflation rates from earlier in the year, I was going to say, from 2023. We're replaying that. And also, it still goes on today. This question, what is a woman? It's a very disingenuous question, and it's actually particularly easy to answer should you have people who are honest actors who want to have a conversation. Why you need to have a conversation about that, I don't know. The problem is people are saying describe red, and the only red they accept is that color. Like, no, it's red. If you show them this, they go, no, that's not red. This is red. So they try and catch people out by using their definition and their parameters of what is a woman. It's a very disingenuous question, and we will put that to bed again tonight. Thanks for being with us again. Hope you're enjoying the best ofs, and let's get into it.
So let's have a look at something else, right? Because I wanted to talk about this, the term woman. And remember, this is coming from a heterosexual male who doesn't have any kind of gender identity issues. So this is just a perspective from me, and there'll be already people out there that say, we'll be saying you shouldn't have this conversation, you're the wrong person. Nah, fuck it. I'm allowed any opinion I want, and I've thought long and hard about some of these things, and you don't have to agree. John Stewart has just set up this part talking about, in my opinion, talking about language, how the language of gender is sort of different from the biology of sex. Yeah. And when people at the moment are asking for questions about definitions around gender words, they're trying to tie it to the biology, whereas society is going down a path at the moment where they're trying to tie it to societal issues, right? And I'll give you a really good example. This is just all me talking now. This is not research or anything from anybody else. These are just my thoughts. So you take them with a grain of salt. I could be completely wrong in your opinion, and that's fine. The word gay, right, for a very long time meant happy, meant colorful, meant all these different sorts of words. There was a particular day. Now there is references in history that talk about the 20s and 30s, the word gay coming to terms or coming towards the community of people who loved each other of the same sex. But really in the mid 50s is when it became adopted as homosexual man in particular, right? But there was a day, right, whatever the date was, let's call it June the 14th, which is a fantastic day, by the way, that the whole world used the word gay, meaning happy. Then the next day, a person, 2 people, 10 people use the word gay for a different reason. But still, 99.99999% of people use the word gay to mean happy, enlightened, frivolous. Then a journey happens. And I would still say that journey is still happening today, because there are probably 95-year-olds out there who would still use the word gay to mean happy. I would guess. But we are basically coming to the end of that journey where if it hasn't happened already, it will happen that the word gay will only mean people who are in a non-heterosexual relationship, right? It won't mean happy anymore. That might be a 60-year journey, right? Before the journey started, it only meant happy. At the end of it, it'll only mean people who are not in a non-heterosexual relationship, most commonly used for men who love men, most commonly. But it can be a myriad within that community. That journey, that 50 or 60-year journey about the word gay, we are in that journey right now with gender terms, right? Yes. There was a period not long ago when the word woman meant adult human female. We are now in a transitional stage where society is deciding what the word woman means, or any other gender term. We will get to the end of that journey at some stage, and then society will have decided. That's another reason that this "what is a woman" thing is so disingenuous, because it doesn't acknowledge the journey that society is taking these words on. And that's what we're doing. We're taking these words on a journey, and we as a society will decide. The word gay, the day before it became used as same-sex attracted couples or people to start off with, the dictionary definition would not have said same-sex attraction couples. Now it does, right? What that means is at the end of this journey, or as we go through this journey, the word woman in the dictionary may change. The definition of the word woman in the dictionary will probably change. And then all of those people going adult human female won't have a leg to stand on, because we are currently in a journey of this language. Another example is Mount Egmont. For people who don't know what that is, Mount Taranaki. For a long time, Mount Egmont was only Mount Egmont. I can remember when they started to change it to Mount Taranaki. Now pretty much everyone calls it Mount Taranaki. There might be a few stragglers. There'll be a time shortly when it only gets called Mount Taranaki. So the way to think about the "what is a woman" or woman conversation or language, is purely language we're talking about, is we are in that transitional journey right now. Those questions are disingenuous because what they're asking for is an absolute. And at the moment in society, we are not in an absolute point. We may get to an absolute point at some stage in the future, like we did kind of with the word gay. But at the moment, it's in transition. So when someone says to you, "what is a woman?" the answer to that is, well, are you talking about what it says in the dictionary? Are you talking about how we use it in society? Are you linking it to sex, which is kind of not what it is, because woman is gender, sex is female? So you explain to me what you're looking for, and then I'll answer your question. And then if someone says, well, what does the word "woman" in the dictionary mean? You'd go, well, at the moment it says adult human female. If you were to say, how does society use it? We're like, well, actually, a lot of society, many in society, use it to say, if you identify as, then you are. So there's not an answer, because it depends how people are using it and what answers they're looking for.
You can see that really clearly in all of these videos on YouTube, where it is posed as a, hey guys, real quick, easy question. What is a woman? They don't want the depth of thought. They want you're real quick, you're on camera, you're being interviewed in the street, real quick, what is it? Oh, cool. There's our answer. Definitive. It's what we're looking for, because that's where people's minds are at the moment. I love the fact that language, it doesn't matter what language, but let's talk about English, just does not stay the same. That's why there's English, American English, New Zealand English. You can't nail that shit down as much as you would love to. You cannot pin language in place. It's why we're not speaking bloody Saxon or Old English. Things change.
And look, I think a really clear one, not to hark back on something I've already said, but a really easy one for us Kiwis to find out is, what does choice mean? Well, no, that's not what it says in the dictionary, no, but it's how we use it in society. I think that's actually a really clinical definition of gender terms. What does it mean in the dictionary might not be what it means. And I mean, my kids are using slay these days. Have you heard this? Slay. Everything's slay. Everything's slay.
Yeah, slay queen.
So what does the word slay mean? Well, not what it means in the dictionary. That's not how it's getting used. So there's how a word's getting used, and there's what it means in the dictionary, and there's historically what it means. So what they're basically saying, these people are asking these questions, is historically, what did it mean? That's actually what they're asking. They're not actually asking, how is it used today?
Hey, welcome back from the clip that just played. I hope you enjoyed it. I want to let you know that the store is still open this week, and for this last week of the pre-recorded shows, we are increasing the discount. It's basically got some stock left over from last year. It's not in its entirety. We don't have every size, but if you're interested in getting some Beardy Boy gear, you can see that the blue and white caps have sold out. There are black and grey, or black on grey caps. There are black on black t-shirts, blue on yellow t-shirts left in some sizes, not all sizes, some sizes. But because it's the last of the summer season, and we really want to say thanks for you guys joining us on, if you're interested in getting any of this gear, then I'm going to give you a 40% off discount for this week only. 40% off by heading to bhnshop.nz, and when you get to the checkout, use the promo code SUMMER for 40% off remaining caps and t-shirts if you want to get them. Of course, the store will continue to operate through this year as we come back, but for this week only, some of that stock from last year's could be yours at a 40% discount. bhnshop.nz. Thanks so much for being with us tonight, and I look forward to seeing you on Monday again live. Let's get into another clip.
In philosophical terms, a society-wide lockdowns and subsequent vaccine mandates put significant restrictions on the individual in order to collectively protect the most vulnerable, right?
So I'm actually going to stop this because I'm going to reset this up as well. So from watching this, you'll get there's two kinds of people, right, when it comes to the lockdowns. They're the kinds of people who wanted to have their lattes and haircuts free and easy, and they're the kinds of people who didn't want people to die, even though it wasn't them. It was the vulnerable people that Jack's talking about. And I'm sorry, but I think you can only be in those two camps. You either wanted the world to be open so you get your lattes and haircuts, or you accepted, as much as you hated it, for parts of the world to be locked down for a period to save people's lives. I don't see how you can be in either both of those camps or another camp. They're the only two camps you can be in. The world open, or for a time, portions of the world closed, right? And I think what you're going to find with this is Lord Sumtion, if you think of it that he's one of those, I want my lattes and haircuts, what he says makes more sense. Because when he starts talking about it and Jack comes back to him talking about deaths, he kind of hand waves it away. Oh, blah, 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 blah. So think about it like that. Even if I'm wrong, correct me if I'm wrong, people in the chat, but if there's two kinds of people who want their haircuts and lattes, no matter what, or people who want people not to die, have those in your head, and we keep hearing this conversation. Jack's just talked about the lockdowns helping to protect the vulnerable.
That's essentially...
That's right.
That was what we were
could have been done without lockdowns.
How so?
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, because, I mean, first of all, the problem that most countries faced was that they went from an early stage down a coercion route. And once you do that...
True. A coercion route. That's what we did. We went down a coercion route. No one's going to disagree with that. But he's saying, unfortunately, we did that. Okay, we'll keep listening.
And once you do that, it's necessarily going to be indiscriminate. You can't have a law that says we have a different rule for people over 65 to people under 65.
Here's the first stupid thing he says, right? And I'll show you the quote word for word later on. But he says, you can't have a different role or rule. I couldn't quite hear what it was depending on his accent. For people over 65 to people under 65, it's too difficult to enforce. Now that's idiocy. Because Chewy, when are you allowed to start drinking? When are you allowed to start driving? Who gets the pension? In America, who can be president? You know, you have to be at school by the time you're 6 or be in. We have rules and laws all over the place, where there are different rules for people over an age and under an age. And he's sitting there saying, you can't have that. It's too hard to enforce. Now, unless he's an absolute kind of libertarian purist and thinks all drugs should be regulated, there should be no limits to, then it's a fair point, but I don't think it is. I think he's making a stupid argument to back up a point that he's making that's full of holes. Now, before I keep going, Chewy, do you want to add anything?
No, please let him keep digging.
Okay, well, here we go.
Route. And once you do that, it's necessarily going to be indiscriminate. You can't have a law that says we have a different rule for people over 65 to people under 65.
Like the pension,
it's
for
too
example.
difficult to enforce.
Exactly over 65.
Using persuasion is a lot more sensitive to the different requirements of each type of person. And it works. We know this because the one country that defied the worldwide trend and did something different was Sweden. They had no lockdown, they didn't close schools, they didn't close restaurants or other places, they only closed major venues
this point's
like
about to be
sports
made.
stadiums. And their results were roughly comparable to the European average.
So there's the Northern Hemisphere bias. The results were roughly comparable to the European average, right? Well, you're not in Europe. You're coming to New Zealand thanks to the free speech, and you tell us why our lockups and mandates were wrong. And your example is, well, Sweden was about the same as the rest of Europe. We're not the rest of Europe. That's not what happened here. And Jack points out the death thing right now, in fact.
That's a lesson which a lot of people are determined not to learn, but it's a lesson which is really vital.
I mean, compare Sweden to New Zealand. Sweden has roughly twice the population of New Zealand, according to the WHO statistics at the moment, about 5 times as many COVID deaths.
That's quite possibly right. But
Well, hang on. There's the hand wave. What? But you know what?
Get my horse.
But in Sweden, you could get your lattes and your haircuts. That's quite possibly right. So there's 2 kinds of people. So he's demonstrating right now he's not one of those kinds of people that cares about people dying. He cares about lattes and haircuts, right? So that's the camp he's in. Because just to say that's quite possibly right is hand waving it away. There's no other possibility there.
That's quite possibly right. But the effect is delayed. I mean, I don't pretend to be an expert on conditions in New Zealand.
Well done. Agreed.
On the whole, in Europe, travel bans achieved almost nothing. I can well believe that, given the geographical position of New Zealand, they might have achieved rather more there. But whatever they achieved can
Get
only
on a
ever be
plane.
temporary.
Fuck off.
Sooner or later, the country has got to open up, as it now has done, and it then gets the delayed effect that it avoided at an earlier stage.
If we were to face
Right. I want to have a look at that last statement as well. And I have actually scripted it down so we can have a look at what he just said. So here's the 2 quotes that I really want to knuckle down from this first part of the conversation. So the first thing he said, as they got written up here, was there's different. Now, I don't know whether he said roll or rule because of his accent, but either way, it doesn't really matter. Different role for people over 65 to people under 65. It's too difficult to enforce. Okay. So therefore, we can't stop people who are 12 driving cars. We can't stop people who are 60 getting the pension. What are you talking about? Tons of our laws are set up when we have a differentiation based on age. So of course you can have different rules based on a differentiation. Now I know COVID stuff wasn't about age, but that was the example he used. But we have tons of evidence for differentiating between people groups for enforcing laws. Age is a perfectly good example. Now, the second part of the conversation that we just played, this is what he said. At the start of it, he said the effect is delayed. So what he's saying after Jack said, 5 times the deaths and 2 times the population, is he said the effect is delayed. Okay, so that says to me he's saying it will happen. The effect, the deaths, are delayed. It will happen. In that last part of the conversation we played, he said this. You can only ever be temporary. The effects, can only ever be temporary. Sooner or later, the country has got to open up and it then gets the delayed effect it avoided earlier. So the delayed effect that he's comparing it to would be deaths. Because if he's saying the delayed effect with the example of Sweden, then that means the delayed effects, the deaths will catch up, which is quite plainly false. Because what happened in New Zealand with our lockdowns and our mandates and how we handled it was we gave the population time to get vaccinated. And so what has happened is the COVID cases have caught up to the rest of the world, but guess what hasn't caught up to the rest of the world? COVID deaths. That's why our COVID deaths are one of the best in the world. That's why there's reports that say the government that we had in then saved 20,000 lives. Because, the number of people catching COVID, the graph has gone up, and that's caught up to be comparable to the rest of the world. But the number of deaths hasn't followed that route. It stayed pretty much down here, and it stayed far, far less. And that's because New Zealand had the time, because of the lockdowns, because of the closed borders, to get everybody vaccinated. I'm not having that debate with anyone tonight. It is empirical data that the vaccination saved lives and the lockdown gave us time to get the population mostly vaccinated. So he's wrong. The delayed effect will be avoided because of the time we had to get vaccinated. So it's fake and false information, and I'm a smidge disappointed that old mate Jack Tame didn't push back a bit harder on this, Joey.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I want to see him set fire to his feet like he did to pretty much every politician in the lead up to the election. Yeah, look, I think this guy who is literally a boomer is going, well, I don't agree with the lockdown in the UK, and therefore I don't agree with lockdowns in general. Like he's just transplanting the UK experience over to us. The UK was missing several advantages that we had. We have just generally a lot more faith that our government is not out to fuck us over.
Well, we did. that might have shifted in the last 18 months.
It may have shifted a bit,
Yeah.
but I still, to this day,
Unfairly so.
even like as much as I dislike National, I don't think that they are as militantly out to get the working class as the Tory government is over in the UK. There is massive swathes of their population that have no buy-in to their central government, that have no trust in it, that second guess everything that they say based on history. It's the thing that they've learned over decades. So when the government comes out and says, we have to lock down to save lives, people didn't go, yeah, okay, this sounds reasonable and they've explained it well, I'll do as I'm told. They automatically went, fuck you, government, no way, something's up. And in the fullness of time, something was up. They were giving out contracts to their buddies. They were carving out, all sorts of loopholes for business associates. They were partying while they were telling people not to go and visit their nan and stuff like that. Their lockdown has nothing on ours. It was compromised.
Yeah.
It was just degraded to a point where it didn't work, and it just ended up to the point where they were saying, oh, we had a lockdown and it didn't work. Well, we're saying we had a lockdown, we had greater buy-in from our population, and we all bit the bullet and did it, and it fucking worked. And what that's doing is showing up a mirror to these guys and going, you could have done this, you didn't, you fools.
Hey team, welcome back. Thanks so much for being with us tonight in this best of series, the summer series, as we take a bit of a break, but we're back live again from next Monday. Just remember that. Huge thanks to our patrons. Love having you guys on board, especially during this period where views are down and the shop's not really getting used. So these beautiful people here are helping us continue to pay the bills that don't go away, even though we have gone away during the holiday period. A huge thanks to all of our beautiful patrons who help us pay the bills. We've had a few new patrons coming on board whilst we've been away. This is not my word, this is theirs. A patron that called themselves Incompetent, that's just the name, and Rob are a couple of people who have signed up during this holiday period. If you're interested in joining on board in what we're doing, you'll want to help support us, and head to patreon.com/Big Hairy News to be a patron, as that helps us to continue to do what we're doing through the year. Thanks so much to all of our patrons. We love you to bits. We will continue right now with the summer series with another pre-recorded clip from last year, and we'll see you on Monday night from 9 p.m. live again. I saw this today on online. No, this is not quite true. Let me tell you the story of my day. This is the story of my day. Remember that song? Blessed Union of Souls, I think it was. I saw the inflation news today, and the inflation news is like, oh, yay, moving in the right direction. So immediately I jumped online because I was like, oh, I wonder what this is like for the rest of the world. I wonder how we're doing compared to the rest of the world. We're not an island. Well, we are, but our economy is not an island unto itself. And I looked around, and there were some countries doing better than us, and there were some countries doing worse than us. I like to look at our trading partners in particular, our like-minded trading partners. Obviously, China is a trading partner, but they have inflation of 0% at the moment. And we're right in the middle of the pack. We're not the best, and we're not the worst. And I thought this is good news today. This is not a bad news story. So when I saw this on the internet, and I'll play the whole thing for you before we get into the utter bullshit that's in the middle of this, I kind of went, I've just looked at the numbers. This doesn't sound quite right. So this was released by National today.
Just came out of a meeting to some new data that's out, and wow, New Zealand's inflation rate is at 6%.
So at that point, I was like, I honestly thought, National's going to say, it's great, it's moving in the right direction, we could do better, but isn't that a good result? I honestly thought, especially with the wow, it's at 6%. Isn't that great? But you'll be surprised to hear, Chewy, that National actually took a different tack on it.
Oh, New Zealand's inflation rate is at 6%. That's higher than people thought it would be. It's more than 3 times what it should be.
Now, that's a really interesting statement. It's more than 3 times than it should be. Now, it's at 6%. That means what she's saying is it should be under 2%. We'll look at that.
And it means that our prices are rising faster than many.
Notice the word many in there. Doesn't list the countries, what they are, many countries in the world. The US, their inflation rate's 3%. Technically 2.97. if we've got to be correct with our numbers, do we pick up on 2.97 versus 3? I mean, you can round it up. I'm okay with that. But if they're going to be finicky about things, technically 2.97.
Canada, 2.8%. Over the ditch in Australia, theirs has come down to 5.6%.
Really? Because I just looked at that and that's not what it said. So I wonder if maybe Australia had an announcement, a couple of hours after hours because of the clock, the sun going around the flat earth. But I thought that doesn't look right to me. So my bullshit meter went off and I started to investigate. Let's get to the end of this though, first of all.
Labor has mismanaged the economy,
Yep.
and the result is the cost of living crisis just drags on now into its third year.
Okay.
National has a plan to reduce the cost of living
How?
and get inflation under control.
How?
We'll bring discipline to government spending. We'll ensure you pay less income tax.
Really?
And we'll stop adding the costs and red tape to business that have pumped up prices. You can't trust Labor on the economy, but you can trust National to get inflation under control.
Right. So there's some pretty big claims there. You can trust Labor, you can't trust Labor, you can trust National, yada, 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 yada. So what I've done, Chewy, is I've actually recut this. And if you're following me on Twitter, you may have already seen it. Okay? I am going to show you this video again. And if you've seen this on Twitter, good on you. I've got a few facts and figures in between this, and I've got the evidence to back them up with us to show you how there is, shall we say, some exaggerations, shall we say some massaging, and shall we say some blatant straight out lies that this video has within it. Let's go.
Just came out of a meeting to some new data that's out, and wow, New Zealand's inflation rate is at 6%.
Okay.
That's higher than people thought it would be.
Okay, so here's the first one. That's higher than people thought it would be. Not sure what people Nicola Willis is referring to, but the Financial Review said that Wellington economists expected 5.9%, while the Reserve Bank had forecast 6.1%. Inflation is 6%, 0.1% higher than whoever Wellington economists are, and 0.1% lower than the Reserve Bank estimation. So some people said that. Okay, I'm sure some people did. Here is the article that I was talking about, Financial Review. Wellington economists expected 5.9%. So that means, so yeah, some people said it would be higher. Who were those people? Don't know, not cited. What did they say it would be? Well, I found people saying it would be 5.9, and it ends up being 6%. Is that really as bad as what National needs to paint? All right, let's keep going.
It's more than 3 times what it should be.
All right, it's more than 3 times what it should be. That would put inflation under 2%, like no Western country in the world right now. In fact, Nicola Willis is about to demonstrate that by listing some of our leading trading partners, who they are, and how they're also not under 2%. So here's inflation around the world right now. Yes, and there are some countries under 2%, but it stops about there. And the only countries you could even slightly compare to New Zealand are Spain at 1.9, Greece at 1.8, and maybe Switzerland at 1.7. Now, Switzerland's a bit of an anomaly out on its side. Maybe that Nazi gold is helping them out. But Greece and Spain, we all know about the global financial crisis, what they did to their economy. Don't know if they're comparisons. If you start to compare it to countries who you could compare us to, say, I don't know, for example, where is a country that you could compare us to? Because I'm still going past. I know that 2.8% or 2.9. There you go. There's the US at 2.97%. So they're not under 2%. And really, you got to go quite a long way. There's not really very much else before us when you're talking about like-minded, comparable countries until you get to us at 6%. Notice how we haven't come across Australia. Notice that we didn't come across Australia that she said was at 5.6%, because they're not at 5.6%. They're at 7%. There it is right there. Australia is at 7%. Straight out, bold-faced lie.
And it means that our prices are rising faster than many, many countries in the world.
I'd like to know which countries.
The US, their inflation rate's 3%.
Bit
Canada,
lower.
2.8%.
I'm sure.
Over the ditch in Australia, theirs has come down to 5.6%.
Right. So let's have a look at this. Yeah, it's not true. Australia's inflation is 7%. Just showed you that. Right now, what Nicola Willis is talking about is the Consumer Price Index, which is at 5.6%. National is criticising the top-line inflation in New Zealand by comparing it to the CPI in Australia. It's very deceptive. Now, I don't really understand a lot of that, So what I like to do is research by going to the internet and finding out what it is. Inflation versus consumer price index, CPI, how they are different. The difference between the CPI and inflation is a source of confusion for many. Hi, it's me. At its easiest level, consumer price index in the United States is used to calculate inflation. Thus, their similarities are better understood based on that relationship, even if the details of their differences are not. Looking at definitions, the Bureau of Labor Statistics and the US Department of Labor defined the CPI as a measure of the average change over time in the prices paid by urban consumers for a market basket of consumer goods and services. It defines inflation as the overall general upward price movement on goods and services in an economy. Now, what Nicola Willis is doing is she is giving us the CPI in Australia. That's 5.6% at the moment. She is not giving us inflation. Inflation is 7% in Australia at the moment. All right, we're going to be very clear on that. That is just a straight out, bold-faced lie, without question.
Labor has mismanaged the economy, and the result is the cost of living crisis just drags on, now into its third year. National has a plan to reduce the cost of living and get inflation under control.
Okay, let's have a look at that. My question, of course, is how? Remember when Christopher Luxon acknowledged on Q&A that National's tax cuts would have caused the same inflationary pressures as their criticisms of how Labor has run the economy? And if you don't remember that, let's have a quick look at that.
Most economists say that tax cuts are inflationary, right? You give people money, people want to spend the money. When they want to spend the money, it drives up demand. Voila, inflation. Why are your tax cuts different?
Well, the point is that Grant Robertson's about to give himself $6 billion, the biggest increase in the budget in the history of New Zealand, right? And all of that's going to be inflationary. That's on top of the $128 billion that we've got. That's $52 billion more than we had in 2017.
Your tax cuts come out of that $6 billion, so you're still spending the $6 billion?
Correct.
So why are yours not inflationary?
Our tax cuts come out of that. They're about $1.7 billion. We think it would be a good idea to do these inflation-adjusted tax thresholds.
So explain to me why it's not inflationary.
Because essentially, it's no more inflationary than Grant Robertson's $6 billion.
So it's the same. It's still inflationary.
Exactly the same. I would argue
ding. So it is the same. It is as inflationary as what they're criticising the then Labor government as what they were doing. Nearly finished, folks. Got to do the breakdown for you, don't we?
We'll bring discipline to government spending. We'll ensure you pay less income tax.
Less income tax. Oh, we had to look at this one then. You mean other than the Greens, whose tax plan gives you the average New Zealander back about $1,100 per year in PAYE compared to National's $800? Who's that party of lower taxes again? And if you're unclear on that, maybe we can show you a couple of fantastic economic orators here talking about that exact thing. We start the video when Chewy has just revealed that National will give you back $800 a year on your income tax.
Total extra income under National, $799.50.
$800. Let's look at the Greens. So $800 for 60 grand.
60,000. Are you studying or looking for work? No.
We're still looking at that same National Labor one. Have you got a?
Oh yeah. Okay. Share this tab as well. Here we go. Yeah, children. No, we didn't
We didn't for them, so they know.
Submit. You will receive $23 extra per week,
which equals about $1,100 a year. So again, the video talking about, we're going to do this and that, we're going to make taxes better under us. Disciplined spending will ensure you pay less income tax. That is, of course, less than, but not as low as the Greens, but less.
The costs and red tape to business that have pumped up prices. You can't trust Labor on the economy, but you can trust National to get inflation under control.
Well, there you go. So my little tweet said, no, I'm sold, National, no gaps at all in that party political broadcast day. So there you go, Chewy. I think I've laid it out. I think I've showed all the evidence. And now you have an opportunity to turn your mic on and have a crack, if you want to have a crack.
Lies and damned lies. Like, there's not even dressing it up. There's not you can't even say that we're being unfair here. It is just lies. And it's like, oh yeah, we can give you all tax cuts because we're going to somehow make everything more efficient to the tune of billions of dollars.
Yeah.
Because we're not making cuts, we're not borrowing, and we're going to give you tax cuts. It's just insane. Like anyone in your life that believes that this is not going to be inflationary, that they aren't going to go into full austerity mode, borrow out the ass, and just give money to wealthy people.
Yeah, or sell, borrow or sell.
Full of shit. And you turn around and you go, if that is your button issue, if that is why you are voting National, then let me show you this Green Party calculator. Because if that's all you care about, here's the better answer. But yeah, for her to go, like right from the get-go, I've just stepped out of a meeting where I've heard this. Bullshit you have. You've been rehearsing this walk and talk all afternoon. So there you go. You're on the back foot already. The deceptive comparisons, the wishy-washy figures of how they're going to magic it all together, like the utter contempt that they would think that is going to land, and actually the contempt that I have for the people that are going to swallow that hook, line, and sinker. Just, I want people. I want the media to rip this to shreds.
Yeah.
It's not hard.
No.
Like, turn the thumb screws.
Yeah. No, look,
hopefully that's what we're going to see on Sunday.
I agree. I agree that we need to look, and because here's the thing, this is the thing that frustrates me, and I said this earlier, but let me just spell it out now. This is not all sunbeam and roses, this inflation thing. It's really not. It's better than it could be, and maybe it even should be. But what are they called? Close Up, 7 Sharp, whatever. The Holmes show tonight actually talked a bit about this, and they talked to an economist, and even the economist said this is not all good news. National could have come out saying this. They could have been critical and accurate, but they choose in this instance to exaggerate and lie, and it really frustrates me. Have a listen.
And Business Desk investment editor Francis Cook is here now. Great to see you again, Francis. How significant is this drop in the inflation rate in the current economic climate?
So this is a really good sign. I think this is something that people can take a bit of heart in, because it has been really tough times for people. We've had the cost of living going up and up and up, and it's been all of these core costs that you really can't avoid. And then in order to try and bring that down, of course, they've been yanking up interest rates. But before that can ever work, you end up getting crunched at both ends. So the fact that we're now seeing it start to work, there's a little bit of light at the end of the tunnel, some of this crunch might start to come off soon.
I was going to ask that. I mean, is the cost of living crisis over? Are we going to start seeing prices for, our groceries and things like that start coming down?
Yeah, so the problem with this is the devil is in the detail. So when we say that inflation has gone down, it means that it's not rising by as much as it was. So it's still going up, just not as badly. And there's also the issue that some parts within that big, wide overall figure, there's some bits that are still going up a lot. I hate to be the bearer of bad news in what should be overall a nice story, but I also don't want to sugarcoat it for people.
So, hello, that doesn't sound like as good news as, like a dumbass like me might say, yeah, inflation's going down. That's an economist explaining it, that this is not all good news. National could have done that, still sold their narrative, still been critical, but instead they chose to lie. Now, I wonder if it's because I always say the 9th floor, because that's apparently where the Prime Minister's office is. Wherever the floor that the National Party leader is and deputy leader, I wonder if it's because the PR people got in and they decided to shape the narrative rather than an economist. Because if this economist had been in that room with them, and if this economist was working for National, they would have said, well, here's the accurate way we can depict that. But they didn't. They just walked down the corridor, down the catwalk, going, exaggeration, mistruth, lie. And because here's the other thing that I always think. That whole Australia is at 5.6% is either a lie, which means this political party is lying to you, or they can't find the correct answer, which means they're incompetent. And they're the party that's telling us they're going to be good with their numbers and they're the party that's telling us that they're going to look after the economy better. They're either lying about Australia's economy, or they're incompetent so much to a point that they get that mistake and then put it out and then leave it out. Neither one of those two conclusions is okay.
It's the other thing that really irritates me here, right, is the assumption that in the aftermath of the global disruption from COVID, and while there is an active war going on in a big chunk of the food production areas of Europe, that somehow, National are going to get our inflation under 2%. Now, I would drag Nicola Willis onto a show and go, okay, tell us how you're going to do that and by when.
Yeah.
Like, what factors... Explain to me how tax cuts are going to bring our inflation down under 2%. Go. Because that's what she's saying, right? And she'll go by making the government more efficient. How?
Yeah. Well,
we're going to sack a whole lot of people.
Well, when we had this conversation with the Millionaires for Humanity people, as they pointed out, social spending, i.e., benefits, family payments, retirement payments, right? So that area, social spending, health, and education are our three biggest places taxpayer money goes. So what are you cutting from that to get this money that you say you need? Because that's where you'll make your biggest savings. That's where the low-hanging fruit. Are you going to rip the ass out of the benefit system, social spending? Are you going to rip the ass out of education? Or are you going to rip the ass out of health? Because that's really your only opportunity. Yes, you could, like Chewy, if you had a family budget and you were spending like we did, $503 last month on power, but everything else was like $20 here and $20 there and $40 there and $50 there. The way that you could save a big chunk of money is to figure out how to get that big bill to a smaller bill, rather than knocking off $2 here and $1 there and $2 there. So the big bills that the New Zealand government has is social spending, health, and education. So that's where your savings need to come from. What are you going to do, National?
Austerity. It's always austerity. If they're talking about efficiency gains, you get more efficiency by having less people working for the health department. It's in all of these things, it's like we've seen over in Europe when they went through their financial crisis, you had a lot of European governments going full austerity mode, and it did not work. We've seen the evidence. They want to talk about evidence-based policy and that sort of thing. There's the evidence. If you're going to say that you are going to save all of this money through efficiency gains, tell me how. What is the mechanism? What is the timeline? Why is it costing so much money? And you'll just point at Labour and go, oh, well, it's because of their pet projects and that sort of thing. And just through the fact that we're national, we're going to be better at it than them. And you're just going to have to take us on faith. And hopefully we'll magic it all together in 3 years. Because what they're talking about here is just nonsense.
When we were talking as well about, you remember we were talking about how can, was it Switzerland? I think it was Switzerland, Norway. These places have such low mortgage rates at the moment. And I got our guest on and they explained to us that, because inflation's really low and there's a comparable thing. So I was just sitting here, and I didn't do this when I organized it, I should have, but I'll do it now. I was just sitting here thinking, why are Greece and Spain's inflation so low? Do you remember, Chewy, what we got told 18 months ago? One of the things that needed to happen in this country about employment for inflation to come down. I won't ask you that question. I'm sorry, I don't mean to set you up the question, but that was more unemployed people. So at the moment, the unemployment rate, the unemployment rate in Greece is 14.8%. The unemployment in Spain is 12.7%. So yeah, they have got lower inflation.
Shit.
And one of them's got 1 in 7 people unemployed. The other one's got 1 in 8 people unemployed. In New Zealand, it's about 4% at the moment. So we have higher inflation. So in other words, if we're going to compare it to them, right? Then we also got to go apples with apples. We need to knock off another 8% of unemployed people.
Jesus, I think you've cracked it there.
Yeah, of course.
That's the question. okay, if you're going to have our inflation under 2%, what's our unemployment rate? Because that's the blunt force instrument to drop it.
There you go. Spain unemployment rate is 12.7%. Actually gone up from 12.6%. Greece's unemployment rate 14.8. Oh, that says for 2021. We should try and get an accurate one. There you go. Let's have a look at that. No. It's still 11%. 11%.
Ours is 3.4.
Yeah, so there you go. So they're 3 times, their unemployment rate is 3 times as high as ours. Let's have a look at, I'll try and do Spain and see if it can give us an exact one as well. There you go, 13%. That's about 1 in 7. 1 in 7, 1 in 8 people in Spain are unemployed. Are we hearing that? So yeah, the question is, if they can do it, their pressures are taken off because of their unemployment as one of the factors. Therefore, we need to get a massive amount of unemployed people. So under National, here's their new slogan, under National, we will make 8% more people unemployed. And then they'll make a joke saying, that'll all come from the bureaucrats. And then inflation will go down.
It doesn't matter where they come from.
And then the tax take will go down, and more PAYE from those people. And then, of course, they're going to find their money to give back to their rich mates. How does that all work? National?
But again, this comes back to what I've said from National all along. What problem are they trying to solve? The problem that they're trying to solve is that they're not the government. And if they get in and they do this, and say we end up with an unemployment rate of 7-9%, do you know what they have then? A shit ton of beneficiaries to bash all the way into their next election.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, that's... I'm furious now.
Sorry,
look at what you've done to me, Pat.
You're not going to sleep tonight?
Oh, I could see it happen.
And there are always anomalies.
God damn it.
I mean, I'm looking it up as we speak to you, but I understand USA's got a very low unemployment rate. Yeah, they're 3.6. But you have to remember as well, the US, they shut down for a very short amount of time and then they stayed open. As we've been told, the reason we have high inflation at the moment is we basically, quote unquote, printed money to keep small businesses open and to keep people safe from COVID. That's why and this is what we're paying for now. We are paying now through inflation for what we borrowed back during COVID to keep more New Zealanders alive. That's the payoff. So we could be down. We could be down at maybe 3, 4, 5% inflation, and we could have another 20,000 dead New Zealanders. I'm okay with a little bit higher and more alive New Zealanders, alive tax-paying New Zealanders. That'll help put money back into the coffers to help eventually bring it down. The only way that these policies would work today, based on historically what we did, was to have a ton more dead New Zealanders. So I'm okay with where inflation's at right now, if it means we've got more alive New Zealanders, or even if it means we had more alive New Zealanders for a bit longer. Let's say they were people in their 80s who survived another year but have sadly left us now. But I'm okay with that payoff. That's my personal view. You may not be if you're watching this. You'd rather go, more dead people. I want to pay less for my broccoli. Okay, that's fair. That's your point. I'm okay with paying a bit more. All right, team, that's us. We're done for the night. I got told off last week that you guys weren't prepared for the finishes of the show. So this is just a little recorded outro to go, that's it. We're done. And remember, tell the world, spread it around. Monday the 22nd, next Monday, we are back live from 9 p.m. here on Big Hearing News. But for right now, hope you enjoyed that.